American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life. When the words all come down like blues on Tuesdays gone down. Throw it all away. Throw it all away.
Okay. We're officially recording episode 201 of American Timelines by History for Jerks.
All right. Welcome to another episode of American Timelines. I'm Amy, and that is Joe.
Yeah. And we're not only jerks, we're assholes.
That's right. And
I'm a bitch.
That's right. And we are going to talk about 1958.
Yes, we are too.
Today.
We are.
Yep.
We are going to talk about that. I think, yeah, 1958, if you recall last episode, those of you who listened, we got into April. We got April right at the beginning.
Little beginning of April, yeah.
But we're going to finish up April and jump into May. And then Amy's got probably something awful that I don't want to know about.
Actually, it's kind of fun.
Oh, it's a fun one?
Well, but it's kind of fun, yeah. It's kind of a fun
Well,
one.
are there boners involved?
Probably.
Okay. Before we get started, let me tell you, listeners, beautiful, attractive, sexy listeners, about a little way you can get 56% off of your subscription for the next 10 days to Magic Mind. Go to www.magicmind.co/American and use my code American20 because you will find yourself happier and doing better and focusing more. Makes me feel good. Pete Holmes was talking about it on his podcast. Haha. And I'm talking about it on my podcast. Yeah, they're just like us, celebrities. Anyway, Magic Mind is a delicious little shot. You just do it real quick in the morning. The new recipe tastes delicious. I mean, you don't have to do it in the morning, but you can because it helps you cut out caffeine. If you drink too much caffeine, you don't need as much when you drink Magic Mind. So that's my link, and that's my code. It's got stuff like lion's mane mushrooms, cordyceps mushrooms, matcha. I don't know if it's matcha or matcha, but the compounds of matcha work together to prevent the spike in cortisol levels and the inevitable crash that comes from ingesting too much caffeine. So try it out. Check out my code. Again, it's www.magicmind.co/American. And the code is American20 to get 56% off a subscription. And you need it. You got to do it. Well, let's just go ahead and start, shall we?
All right.
With April 2nd, 1958. Shall we do that?
Yes.
The date when Delaware became the first U.S. state in almost 47 years and the 7th state overall to abolish what? What do you think? It became the first state in almost 47 years to abolish something. Governor J. Caleb Bogg signed a bill that passed the state
I have no
House
idea.
of Representatives.
What is
Capital punishment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It always goes in and out of vogue, doesn't it?
I guess it does.
Seems to.
Delaware's last execution, a hanging, had taken place on December 7th, 1945.
Did you hear that senator recently said he wanted to have hanging by tree come back?
Hanging by tree.
That's lynching.
Yeah. It's crazy what they're saying right now.
Yeah,
like it's almost unreal. It's almost like it's not real. Like,
right.
Reality's not even real anymore, what people are saying and doing. It's weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, that last hanging was Anderson D. Butler, who was executed for raping a child.
Yikes. Sorry about that.
Can you turn that off? No new U.S. states had acted since North Dakota had repealed the death penalty in 1911. So I feel like that last sentence makes me kind of be like, maybe capital punishment's not,
Right.
Sometimes it's okay, right?
It's hard.
Nobody
because
wants a child rapist around.
Right. When you have somebody like that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is guilty of
That's the problem,
something that
yeah.
is that heinous,
And
of course.
That's a anus. You
But
said
the-
anus.
But the problem is, so many innocent people get put to death, and even if one innocent person gets put to death, it's not worth it.
It's not worth all the other ones who deserved it.
Right? You just let
Yeah.
them rot in jail. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, that's
Put
true.
them in a cell.
Well, it
and
costs money, right?
let 'em
That's
rot.
why. That's why they care.
It
'cause
costs more money to execute because of all the appeals. It costs way more to execute. So we save money by just letting them rot in a cell.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, but you got to feed them every day. 3 squares
Yeah.
a day.
So
Lights, electricity.
if we could listen, if we would
the
get
environmental
all
strain on
the nonviolent
flushing.
drug offenders out of jail, we'd have plenty of room for those motherfuckers
That's true.
and plenty of money.
Yeah, we should get all the nonviolent offenders, all the drug-related ones, because drug abuse is a disease, not a
Right.
shouldn't be a criminal thing.
Right. Exactly.
Oh well. April 6th, 1958 was a Sunday,
Yeah.
and on that day, Capital Airlines Flight 67 crashed in a snowstorm on its approach to the Tri-City Airport in Freeland, Michigan,
Ooh.
killing all 47 people on board. The turboprop
sucks.
Vickers Viscount had departed from Flint as part of a multi-stop flight between New York and Chicago,
Mhm.
and had an undetected buildup of ice on its horizontal stabilizer. You don't want your horizontal stabilizer to be covered
Oh,
in
I
ice,
hate
man.
when my horizontal stabilizer is covered in
You know what?
ice.
I've always noticed you have a nice horizontal stabilizer on you. Anyway, the crew attempted a steep turn on landing, and the airplane stalled and went into a spin.
Yikes.
Stacy Henson in the
Got
Saginaw.
to be bad enough to crash, but it would be double bad to be spinning the whole time.
Yeah, on your way to your
On the
imminent
way to your
death.
death, you're spinning. I would
Yeah.
I would just
That'd be
bleh.
awful. Stacy Henson in the Saginaw News tells the story of Carl Burke, who was 12 at that time, and he was in bed at the family farm 500 yards from the crash. He said, "My dad heard the explosion when the plane hit and got up to look out the window. He called a neighbor and told him, but the neighbor said it's probably just a haystack burning." He said just about everybody who worked Carl said everybody who worked, so everybody rushed to the crash site, and everybody who worked at it was throwing up, Burke said. He said, "I think it was 6 a.m. when they got the last people's bodies out. In the morning, Carl Burke got up to do his farm chores and later went to the scene to examine the wreckage. It was quite shocking," he said. "There were footprints on every part of the ground. I even seen a high-heeled shoe that some woman lost. It didn't belong to a victim because it was in good shape. The only thing that was left was the engines buried in the mud and the tail. In the back of the airplane was a whole bunch of white shirts and packages, and they weren't burnt," he said. He never learned who they belonged to. Recovery crews brought in cranes to haul out engines and parts. About a month later, when the field lay barren, Carl Burke took a casual walk across the site. He said, "I was just looking around, just to look for any pieces or parts of metal, and I found somebody's upper jaw in the dirt," he said.
Oh, God.
I took it to the airport, and they said they would get it to the proper authorities.
Yikes.
Isn't that gruesome?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awful. And that's the same day that Arnold Palmer, the golfer, who's got the drink named after him.
I was in the same room as him once. So
You were?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, a little touch of celebrity.
Right?
Why were you in the same room as Arnold Palmer? Do tell.
Because I worked a summer PGA tournament in St. Louis. I was in
What?
part of the catering staff.
You worked a
And-
PGA tournament in St. Louis?
Yeah, Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and all these other people were there.
We've been together over
I've never mentioned it.
25 years, and you've never once said that.
Yeah.
Who else
It
was
was
there?
it was my cousin Katie's stepdad's club that
Okay.
hosted the PGA tournament.
You know what? I'm going to go on the record and I'm just going to say this.
And it was swanky.
Katie
Like-
is good people.
They had these big
Wait, you worked there?
buffets.
You worked that you had
Yeah.
a job there?
If just for the summer.
Did
for
Katie
the,
work
just
with
for the
you?
tournament. Yeah.
Oh, just for that tournament?
And it was swanky. My God, they had like these spreads that you'd never believe.
Like margarine spreads?
Like chocolate fountains and
Ooh, I love chocolate fountains. What about cheese fountains? Were there any cheese fountains?
probably there was all kinds of crazy shit.
I love chocolate fountains. Anyway, on that day, Arnold Palmer of Latrobe, Pennsylvania, who was a former paint salesman, hung on to win his first major professional golf championship with a one-stroke victory in the 1958 Masters Tournament. And if you had, if we had been doing this podcast back then, you could tell him that you knew that about him.
Yeah, well, I didn't talk to him or anything.
Well, Arnold, I know you've always wondered how Arnold Palmer learned golf, but he learned golf from his father, who had suffered from polio at a young age and was head professional and greenskeeper at Latrobe Country Club, which allowed young Palmer to accompany his father as he maintained the course. That's according to Wayne Stewart in his book, The Gigantic Book of Golf Quotations, which I'm going to get you for your birthday.
Thank God. I've been waiting for that.
I'm trying to get Wayne Stewart to be a regular on the podcast.
Can you get it autographed for me?
Yeah, The Gigantic Book of Golf Quotations. That's
Yeah.
If you know Amy, that's her thing.
That's my thing.
And speaking of St. Louis, on April 12th, 1958, which was a Saturday, the St. Louis Hawks defeated the visiting Boston Celtics by a single point to win Game 6 of the 1958 NBA Finals. And the championship of the NBA went to St. Louis, the St. Louis Hawks in the NBA. You ever heard of them?
No.
Did you know that St. Louis had an NBA team?
I knew they used to have one, but I think it was called something different.
No, it was the Hawks. I just told you.
No, I know, but I mean, since then, I think they had another one.
Really? Well, maybe they did.
And that was called something different.
I
But
wish
I
I
might
knew.
be wrong. I don't
Well,
know.
the Atlanta Hawks are the Hawks that I know, and I didn't know that they were ever in St.
Oh.
Louis. And I don't think a lot of people knew that because they started out in Buffalo as the Buffalo Bisons in 1946. And after 38 days, they moved to Moline, Illinois, where they were renamed the Tri-Cities Blackhawks. And that's how they got the Blackhawks, the Hawks name. And then in 1949, they joined the NBA as part of the merger between the NBL and the BAA. And then they moved to Milwaukee, or they changed the name to the Milwaukee Hawks. I didn't know they were the Milwaukee Hawks ever. This is crazy. I didn't know this. And then in 1955, they moved to St. Louis, where they won that championship. And they were in the finals in 57, 60, and 61. And then I think from there they moved to Atlanta in 1968. And they've been there ever since. So how about that?
How about that?
And we also have our first birthday that same day. So hit the music, wonderful Matt Truman and the great Matt Truman Ego Trip.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
All right. The birthday on this date, April, 12th, 1958?
Mm-hmm.
See if you can guess. It's a very famous Bulgarian athlete who held the world
come
record
on.
for the women's 100-meter hurdles and won the 1987
No.
World Championship in Plovdiv.
No, I'm not going to know that answer to that one.
Well, it's Ginka Zagorcheva.
And that was flawless pronunciation, I'm sure.
Ginka Zagorcheva! Ginka!
Oh my God,
Ginka Zagorcheva!
there's a giant bug in here. Looks like a mosquito, but it's one of those
You
really
know,
big ones.
That brother's been flying around this garage for
See him?
3 days. And I'm letting him live. I'm just going to see how long he lives. I'm doing a test.
Does he bite or anything?
I don't know. I'm not sure it's a he. It might be a she. How do you know sex of insects?
You have to ask Henry
Insect sex.
if he knows. He
Let's
probably
ask our
doesn't know.
son. He wants to be an entomology guy. Anyway, April 13th, 1958, the Tony Awards.
Hello? Did you have a stroke?
The Tony Awards
Oh.
were presented at the Waldorf Astoria. Sunrise at Campobello was named the best play, and The Music Man was the best musical that year.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Sunrise at Campobello?
No.
Campobello? I haven't either. The only reason I left it in there is I wanted to see if you knew what that was. April 15th, 1958 was a Tuesday, and the San Francisco Giants beat the Los Angeles Dodgers in the first Major League Baseball regular season game ever played in California.
All right.
Because they just moved there. Remember I told you about the Giants and the Dodgers moving from New York and Brooklyn?
Yes.
Now they're playing out in California.
What do you know?
And on the same day, April 15th, it was tax day. I don't know if it was tax day then, but one man was killed and 31 people were injured in a fire on the third floor of the Museum of Modern Art in New York
Oh.
City
Oh, boy.
when a worker let a cigarette fall on an oil-soaked drop cloth.
Jesus.
Yeah, see, they were
Just
remodeling.
put that anywhere, pal.
They were installing an air conditioning in the museum, and most of the paintings by artists had been moved, but 6 works of art were damaged. One of Claude Monet's Water Lilies paintings was destroyed.
Oh, my God.
Alison McNeary of the Daily Beast recalls that shortly after noon on April 15th, electricians working on the second floor of the museum decided to indulge in the day's favorite lunchtime custom, a smoke.
Yeah.
Drop cloths covered the floor, open paint cans sat nearby, and it's believed a pile or 2 of sawdust were left where they had fallen. As to what happened next, the New York Times reported that authorities believed a spark from one of the workers' cigarettes fluttered away and landed on the sawdust, which went up in flames, igniting the drop cloths, followed by the highly flammable cans of paint.
Yikes.
That one little spark caused a deadly chain reaction and set in motion what would result in a destructive 3-alarm fire that raged through MoMA.
3 alarm.
Yeah, 3 alarm. That's a lot of alarms.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up, a bunch of people went back in, like, to get all the other art, and they ended up doing like a fire line, like a fireman's brigade thing. Where they get
That's why they got that name
saved,
from.
Yeah, that's where probably from this.
Probably from
I'm
firemen.
amazed there wasn't. I mean, I guess there were tons and tons of fires back in the day because everything was
was made of wood.
and everybody
and
smoked.
A lot of people didn't have electricity, so they used candles for lighting and kerosene lamps, and everybody smoked. So.
If you had to guess, how many fires have there been?
What?
How many fires would you guess there have been ever in the world?
I don't think that's an answerable question, honey.
The answer is more than 7.
That's true.
Anyway, I'm going to move on. How about that?
Yes, please.
I got a whole bunch more on that museum thing. I have like 3 pages of information about the insurance that the museum received. And I just realized now that it was boring.
Yeah.
I got the good part though, right?
Yes.
Fire.
The fire.
You know, and the painting burning.
Mm-hmm.
And then Friday, April 18th, 1958, the first regular season Major League Baseball game in Los Angeles, California was played between the Dodgers and the Giants. So the first time they played in San Francisco. Also, on that same day, according to Time magazine, on his way home at quitting time, Finnish-born William Heikkila, 52-year-old man, found 2 men waiting for him outside the offices of the San Francisco engineering firm where he worked as a draftsman. One flashed a badge, and then he said, "Call my wife," to a fellow coworker. "Tell her immigration has picked me up." For 10 frustrating years, District Director Bruce Barber, the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Services chief in San Francisco, had been waiting for a chance to deport him because he was sometimes a communist. And they were going to deport him back to Finland, where he was born. Under the law, he seemed to be clearly deportable. His Finnish parents had brought him to the U.S. when he was 3 months old. But he had never become a U.S. citizen, and by his own admission, he was an active Communist Party member from 1929 to 1939. He fought off deportation with a 10-year series of habeas corpus writs, court restraining orders, and appeals, including one appeal to the Supreme Court. But in handling Heikkila's latest delaying action in San Francisco's Federal District Court, his lawyer neglected to get a restraining order to curb immigration's Barber. That oversight caught Barber's watchful eye, and he sent Immigration Service agents to grab him and haul him away. I just can't believe that he came when he was 3 months old. So he's going to go back to Finland, where he's never been.
It's like he's like one of the dreamers.
Like a dreamer, yeah, a DACA dreamer. But he did admit it was his own fault and his lawyer's fault, kind of, for not doing the right paperwork. And because he was a communist, that was part
It didn't help, right?
But they ended up getting him back pretty quick, and then it was the rest of his life was just a court battle to try to stay in the U.S. Until he died.
Okay.
So, yep. How about that?
How about it?
How about that story? April 20th, 1958, 420.
All right.
You know what 420 is?
Yes. Every day, baby.
The Montreal Canadiens won their 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup,
I don't give a
defeating the Boston Bruins.
420 is a state of mind.
It is? 420 is a lifestyle.
Yes.
You live it every day. Every day. Smoke weed
Faux
every
shizzle.
day.
Faux
4/21, 1958 was a Monday.
Mhm.
All 47 persons aboard United Airlines Flight 736 were killed, along with a two-man crew of a U.S. Air Force F-100 jet fighter when the two planes collided at an altitude of 21,000 feet shortly after passing over Las Vegas.
Man.
You know, that there was a lot of these collisions. Like,
I know.
air traffic is needed bad at this time.
Air traffic control.
And we have another birthday in Gaffney, South Carolina.
Amy hates birthdays. Amy hates birthdays.
What actress, one of your favorite all-time actresses, American film actor?
Born.
Yep. Her name is Rosalie Anderson MacDowell. But you know her as
Andie MacDowell?
Andie MacDowell, your favorite actress in Gaffney, South Carolina.
That's not my favorite actress.
It is, but it's not far from here. And she was born in Gaffney to Pauline Johnston, a music teacher, and Marion St. Pierre MacDowell, a lumber executive. She had three older sisters. Her mother was an alcoholic, and her parents divorced when she was 6, and her mother died of a heart attack in 1981 at the age of 51 after living sober for a year. She graduated from Gaffney High School in 1976, home of the Indians. Team colors black and gold. Notable alumni include Sidney Rice, who played for the Vikings, and Jenny Kabul from the Nerdy Night Out series. My former coworker, Jenny Kabul,
Yep.
who does Nerdy Night shows. And she was a guest, I think. Wasn't she on American Timelines?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you met her. There you go. She went to the same high school as Andie MacDowell. Boom. You like that?
All right.
And she was a model originally. Somebody saw her and thought she was beautiful and gave her an acting gig.
Lucky.
And then April 23rd, 1958, was the 1958 Fort Campbell parachute tragedy. You know what that consisted of?
What?
A U.S. Army mass jump of 1,300 paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division saw 5 soldiers killed and 137 injured when, after they jumped, the high winds began partway through the operation of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and the winds blew everybody and their parachutes got all tangled up and everybody was a big mess. People getting injured. Shouldn't be jumping
No.
high wind
Yeah, that's
out of a
probably
plane.
bad idea.
And they said they knew they shouldn't have, but they did anyway because they've been like training for this for so long. They just want to get over with, I guess. That's some conjecture. Now, April 27th, 1958. This is going to kind of feed the rest of this episode. It's going to be an ongoing saga. April 27th, U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon and his wife, Pat, made sweet, sweet love.
Stop.
No, they began an ill-fated 18-day goodwill tour of South America, stopping over first to Port of Spain and Trinidad before embarking the next day to Uruguay. And so we'll get to what happens in a little
Okay.
bit. Okay?
All righty. Keep that
Yeah.
in my hat.
Make a note. And then Tuesday, April 29th, 1958, did you know that Alan B. Dumont, founder of the Dumont Television Network, remember it was like CBS, NBC, and Dumont was another one. He was the inventor of the cathode ray tube used in the first practical televisions, okay? So he knows his stuff about TVs. He received a patent on this date for another TV invention that would never be put into use.
Oh.
That it was called the Dumont duoscopic maybe TV set, which would allow 2 programs to be telecast simultaneously to the same set
Oh, that's pretty
with
nifty.
polarizer panels to allow different viewers to choose which of the 2 programs to watch and earpieces to hear separate shows.
That's pretty nifty.
So everybody would be sitting in a room, kind of like
Watching
everybody
their
does
own
now, watching
show.
their own shit on their phone. Like he was
Yeah.
desperate for everybody to be like it is now, where everybody's just staring at their own phone
Yeah.
with their headphones in and nobody talking to each other.
Correct.
But it never happened. Never happened. And I'm going to skip Michelle Pfeiffer's birthday, which is that same day. I'm going to just skip
Thank God.
that. And we're not going to go into the fact that her parents were originally from North Dakota, and that she went to Fountain Valley High School and graduated in 1976. Notable alumni including
Stop
David
it.
Denman, who played Roy from The Office. We're not going to get into any of that. Even though the team colors were blue, gold, and red, home of the Barons, we're not going to talk about Michelle Pfeiffer
No.
and her birthday.
Good.
Not even going to put the theme music in there.
Stop it.
This theme music.
Stop.
Okay, April 30th, 1958 was a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's pronounced. The U.S. Navy conducted an experiment to determine how high a basketball would bounce if dropped from the top of the Empire State Building.
Oh my god.
Of course, they couldn't drop it off the Empire State Building because of the danger to everyone below.
Yes.
So a U.S. Navy blimp hovered over its Lakehurst, New Jersey base at 1,472 feet, the altitude of the building's television tower, and dropped 12 basketballs as closely as possible to a target on a runway.
Mm-hmm.
The test showed that a basketball dropped from the Empire State Building would bounce back up no higher. Do you want to guess how many feet?
Oh. I
So
would
the-
say it
it's
bounces like
1,472 feet. They're dropping it. How high does it bounce back up?
10 feet.
That's it? You think just 10?
I don't know.
22. 22
Okay.
feet 9 inches.
Okay.
Now
That's
you
it.
know.
Yeah. Well, that's more than I thought.
It's still not that high, though. Like,
No.
for that high, that far up, that's interesting. I've always wanted to know that. Now
Maybe
I
a
know it.
Super Bowl would be different.
Super Bowl would be way different. And
Yeah.
our dogs would chase it. They'd jump out of a window to catch one.
Jeez.
May 1, 1958 was a Thursday. We're into May now, babe.
Alrighty.
U.S. space scientist James Van Allen announced the discovery of Earth's magnetosphere.
Oh.
He didn't know it existed until then.
Sweet.
Everybody was just walking around not knowing about magnetospheres. The initial reaction was that it's now called the Van Allen radiation belt, located 600 miles above the Earth, and with radiation 1,000 times more powerful than expected, was that it raises a new obstacle to manned spaceflight. So spacecraft would now need to be redesigned to protect against all that radiation.
Yeah.
The radiation is so intense, a reporter wrote, that a space traveler could use his weekly tolerance dose of radiation in 1.5 hours. Everybody's got a dose of radiation tolerance
Yeah.
by week. Did you know that?
What?
Never mind. May 3rd, 1958 was a Saturday, and we got the Kentucky Derby in the 1958 Kentucky Derby. Do you want to guess who won? What horse won?
No.
The Triple Crown of American
Secretariat.
Thoroughbred Horse Racing. Tim Tam. It was Tim Tam.
Okay. I only know one horse.
Well, you don't know. No, now you know two. You know Tim
Two,
Tam.
but two horse. I know Seabiscuit.
Oh,
Secretariat.
Seabiscuit. Isn't that fictional?
No.
What about
that was
Mr.
the real
Ed?
one. That was a real. Mr. Ed was fictional.
Black Beauty.
Fictional.
Mr. Ed. Silver.
Fictional.
What was Tonto's horse's name?
Copper. I don't know.
Really?
No.
According to the New England Historical Society, on May 3rd, 1958, that same day, rioting broke out at a rock concert at the Boston Garden, where New York disc jockey Alan Freed was hosting a live broadcast of his rock and roll party show, and at least 15 people in attendance were robbed or assaulted. A grand jury in Boston indicted Freed a few days later for inciting the unlawful destruction of property. So here's what actually happened. There was 20 police on hand for 5,000 rock and roll fans who jammed into the arena. The first half of the show went smoothly, but during the second half, police interrupted the show several times, forcing Freed to quiet the audience. Like they stopped the show. Police stopped because the audience was too loud and having fun. Jerry Lee Lewis and his band had the kids dancing in the aisles, but the police again forced Freed to stop the show and make the audience sit down
Jeez.
at a concert. They're up and dancing.
Oh my God.
Then Chuck Berry came on the stage to close the show out.
Yeah.
Again, kids are dancing in the aisles. It's Chuck fucking Berry, baby.
Right.
Get out of here, Chuck Berry. Stop looking at my wiener.
That's right. God damn it.
You know what? But he makes you dance.
He do.
And the kids, again, were dancing in the aisles, and the police forced Freed to make them sit down. One of the police officers refused to dim the house lights. Freed, frustrated, told the audience, "It looks like the police in Boston don't want you kids to have any fun." At that point, fighting broke out, and kids started throwing chairs at each other.
Jesus.
And Freed got blamed for it, inciting the
Yeah.
melee with his remarks, but the fight may have been a result of a gang rivalry. We're still not sure.
Well, he didn't make it any better.
He didn't. But Chuck Berry hid behind the drummer to get as far away from the scuffle as possible, and then the crowd poured out into the streets, and there were arrests, and there were stabbings reported, and sluggings, and
Jesus,
robberies,
Pete.
and rapes. But Chuck Berry's manager said he walked out after the show ended and didn't see anything really. So
Man.
it's all conjecture. And then they tried to ban, and Boston banned rock and roll and all that kind of stuff happens in the 50s. So you're getting your elbow cleaned.
I'm getting my legs cleaned and my elbows cleaned.
Our dog is cleaning your elbows, and good girl, Wheezy. Good dog. At least she's not chewing on a ball. May 6th, 1958 was a Tuesday, and millions of people in the U.S., including U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, went to the fallout shelter nearest to them in a nationwide civil defense drill. Operation Alert 1958. We should ask older people if they remember this. The exercise was held in 46 of the 48 U.S. states, with Michigan and Indiana excused from participation because of pre-scheduled statewide events.
Oh.
At 10:30 Eastern Time, sirens signaled that persons outside should look for the nearest shelter as an exercise for the time that a nuclear bomb might be dropped on the area. And the drill ended after 10 minutes. Nationwide
Man.
bunker drill.
We're going to get back to those days. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah. Where are we going to go, though? We're going to have to build a bunker, huh?
Yeah, I guess. In the backyard.
Hey, our podcast studio could be a bunker.
Where?
I mean, we could build a podcast studio in a
Oh.
bunker.
Yeah, maybe.
That brings us to May 8th, 1958, when, I don't know if you know this, but U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon was threatened by a hostile crowd of 2,000 leftist rioters while he was visiting Lima. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm used to Lima, Ohio.
I know.
Ohio's filled with Toledo instead of Toledo, Lima
Yeah.
instead of Lima.
Right.
There's one more. There's another one like that.
They're all like that. It's
Oregon.
not just Ohio. It's all around the country.
They just
Yeah.
take words
Yeah.
and say them wrong. Okay. Anyway, he was threatened by a hostile crowd of 2,000 leftist rioters in Peru as part of an official tour of South America. Nixon got out of his automobile to confront demonstrators who had massed outside of the University of San Marcos and was spat upon, grazed on the neck by a stone, shoved, and booed.
Oh, my.
A reporter at the scene wrote, pale with anger, but keeping a tight smile on his lips, Mr. Nixon stood his ground for 4 minutes, though engulfed by screaming demonstrators.
Wow.
He challenged them to face him in a debate. All the demonstrators.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
was this trip where he almost got killed and all this stuff. And that brings us to May 8th. That's May 8th, 1958, which is a Thursday, and you have something
Yes.
that happened simultaneously.
Yes.
Or simultaneously, as the kids say.
Yes. And we'll get there. But I am going to talk about the Shoe Bandit.
The Shoe Bandit. Okay. This
So-
is interesting.
In 1958, a shoe bandit had San Diego and Coronado on edge.
Oh, okay.
And he would accost women as they walked home at night from the bus or the ferry, knocking them to the ground and stealing just one shoe, usually the left.
Really? He would just take left shoes.
He sneaked into homes and took leather pumps, stilettos, sandals, hundreds of shoes, discarding many of them later in the crawl spaces below other houses.
Sneaked or snuck?
Sneaked.
Are those both acceptable? I think they are.
I think snuck is a word.
Snuck? I
Maybe.
snuck?
I don't know. All right,
Maybe
most
not.
of the victims were not seriously injured, but several were hospitalized with fractured skulls or broken bones. One was hit with a bowling pin. Another
Oh.
was the butt of a screwdriver.
Okay.
And the men and women were scared. The whole community was scared.
Everybody was scared about the Shoe Bandit.
There was a teen at the time named Bill Geis.
Bill Geis? How do you
he-
spell Geis?
Gise.
Okay.
He was a teen at the time when the Shoe Bandit came into his house at 1 a.m. one night.
Ooh.
His mother woke up and screamed, startling the intruder, who dropped the shoes he was stealing and fled.
He dropped them like the whole point he came in there was for the
Yeah,
shoes,
he
bro.
got nervous, I guess.
I got nervous. dropped
Geis
the
was
shoes.
quoted as saying, "This was a place where there was hardly ever any crime. Nobody locked their doors. That's how he was able to get in so many places."
What city was this in?
Coronado.
Coronado what?
California, I think.
California.
Stories about him ran in the local newspapers, small items at first, tucked on the inside pages, and then on the front pages as the number of incidents in the community's alarm increased.
It started growing.
Teasers
bigger.
to the evening TV broadcast asked, "What makes the shoe bandit tick?" So unnerved was the populace that some residents bought dogs and guns for protection,
Yeah.
sometimes with tragic results. In one Ocean Beach home, a 4-year-old boy found a loaded .38 caliber handgun in a box by a bed, newly purchased, the owner told police, because of the bandit, and accidentally shot himself in the chest.
You know, I think about this. Gun sales and dog sales are increasing because of a shoe bandit.
Right.
So wouldn't it be smart for those industries to? Well, guns already do that. They already manufacture fear to get people to buy them. I guess they already do that.
Right.
No,
That's
never
true.
mind. Yeah.
All right.
So maybe this is a shoe bandit's fake, just to increase sales.
Maybe. So the police were criticized because they couldn't catch this guy.
Yeah. Stupid police.
They would send undercover officers onto buses and the Coronado Ferry, which because the bridge wasn't not built yet at the time.
Who's the Coronado Ferry? What's his name?
No,
Lance?
Ferry.
Just kidding.
On at least 2 occasions, vigilantes beat up an officer they mistook for the bandit.
Okay.
So what makes the story remarkable over 6 decades later, beyond all the colorful details and the way it's vividly recalled by those who were there, is what it says about its time and place. In a modern world where terrorism means bombs and guns being used to kill people by the dozens, the idea of a shoe bandit terrorizing a community seems kind of quaint.
Yeah.
So this whole spree started in September of 1956 in Coronado, and then 2 months later in San Diego.
Okay.
The first story in the San Diego Union to identify it as a series by a shoe bandit, published in February 1957, started this way, quote, "An eccentric young thug who attacks women to steal their shoes found a 5th victim when a 24-year-old aircraft clerk typist was slugged in Claremont. She was walking home after getting off the bus. A man knocked her down from behind and took one of her shoes, but not her purse." So then by September of 1957, more than a dozen similar instances had been reported.
Wow.
Twice, he attacked more than one woman on the same night. Newspaper columnists began working on items about the bandit. One, under the heading Shoe Bandit Talk, relayed the story of a man who chided his wife, maybe in jest, maybe not, for living recklessly by wearing a new pair of shoes after dark on their 10th wedding
Yeah, I wouldn't
anniversary
do that,
dinner.
lady. Put them new shoes somewhere else.
Another column item spoke to the small-town nature of the community. It noted that the most recent victim was the mother of one of the first.
Oh, really?
"The shoe bandit had better start a reference file," the columnist wrote. Even Jack Murphy, the popular and influential sports columnist who would later have the Mission Valley Sports Stadium named after him,
Oh, that guy?
which is now called Qualcomm Stadium,
Qualcomm?
got into the act. In a September 1957 column, he wrote, quote, "Life is very perplexing. Gals in San Diego wonder if they should go barefooted until the shoe bandit's caught."
Yeah, those ladies should go
Eric
barefooted.
Callan, who lived in Bay Park and was in elementary school at the time, remembers watching cartoons on TV in the afternoon and hearing the newscasters say, "The left shoe bandit strikes again." As a 7-year-old, he found the whole thing bewildering. Why would somebody want to steal some stinky shoe?
Do you think he's like a weirdo with a foot fetish?
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
He said people talking about it on television really seemed upset and terrified. And when he
Yeah.
asked the grown-ups in his own life what was going on, they would change the subject. So on at least 2 occasions, police announced they had brought in for questioning someone they thought was the bandit. The newspapers ran photos of the suspects, along with their home addresses,
Really?
which was common
Anybody
practice
who's
at the
a
time.
suspect just put their address out.
Along
guy
with
might
it,
be
they also
it.
ran names of addresses of the bandits' victims. The
Yeesh.
addresses.
That's crazy.
Both times, the men were cleared after being viewed in lineups by some of the victims. Police were also flummoxed in their use of undercover officers. Every time they followed a woman off a bus or ferry, she made it home safely.
Well, that would flummox them.
One time, an officer had to choose between following 2 women getting off a bus at the same time, and the one he followed arrived without incident, and the other one was attacked.
Talk about being flummoxed. That will flummox the hell out of you.
So now we get to May 8th, 1958.
Okay?
A woman in Coronado was watching TV with a boyfriend, a Navy officer,
On a Thursday, while Nixon's getting screamed at.
when they noticed a slightly open door opening wider.
Oh.
They looked over the back of the couch and saw a man crawling along the floor. Wouldn't that be so creepy? You look
And you
over
know in
and
the
there's like a
50s
guy crawling on the floor.
Well, it's 1958, so you know he's got a fedora and
Yeah.
a trench coat on.
The
And
man
And
fled.
he's mumbling, yeah, see? Yeah, I'm a guy in the
Now
50s.
you're getting that's like 30s.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh,
Edward
he's just
G.
got
Robinson
greasy
was his
hair.
30s.
Okay, that's right. He's got grease in his hair then.
So the man fled,
50s.
and the Navy officer chased him. They got into a fight in the street. Neighbors
God.
overheard it and called police.
Oh, were the neighbors getting flummoxed?
Officers found a man hiding behind a lawn chair in a backyard and arrested him. His name, Wayne Snow McFarland.
Wayne Snow McFarland, the left shoe bandit,
He
y'all.
was 23, a Navy pilot born and raised in Houston and stationed at North Island.
That sounds like a stand-up guy.
Police asked him if he was the shoe bandit. He said no.
Oh.
They got a warrant to search his Coronado apartment and found several women's shoes in a trunk.
Oh.
Confronted with the shoes, he confessed and led officers to several nearby caches of female footwear.
I am the shoe bandit.
The spree had lasted 20 months. McFarland admitted to 22 assaults and 15 burglaries, although police believe there probably were more victims. All I know is I had to get those shoes, he told one reporter. McFarland's father, Morris, a furniture store owner, hired a swaggering Texas defense lawyer named Percy Foreman, a former prosecutor who was 6'4", weighed 250 pounds, and carried around a newspaper clipping that described him as a millionaire who practices law as a hobby.
Yep, you got to get a big guy like that.
When a reporter asked him about the report that he was the greatest lawyer since Clarence Darrow, he replied, I wouldn't say it, son, but when accused of it, I don't deny it. Right away, Foreman said the legal issue wasn't McFarland's guilt, but his mental state. The human mind is a wonderful mechanism, the attorney said, but it takes only a little thing to set it off balance. He had his client plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
Yeah, insanity. Reason of flummoxed insanity.
So at his preliminary hearing, 8 women identified him as the bandit. People talked about his eyes staring and full of violence. Yes.
Yeah.
In the words of one witness, she said his eyes were staring and full of violence.
Ooh.
He was bound over for trial, then sent to Patton State Hospital near San Bernardino for a mental evaluation. A doctor there diagnosed McFarland as a sexual psychopath with a shoe fetish, possibly dating back as far as elementary school when he stole a pair of shoes from a teacher. The doctor said McFarland was sane during his spree, that he knew the difference between right and wrong. Returned to San Diego, McFarland pleaded guilty to 1 count of robbery and 1 count of burglary. Each count carried a sentence of 5 years to life. Instead of prison, though, he was sent to Atascadero State Hospital for treatment.
Ooh, is that where the doctor diagnosed him as with a dome full of bad brains?
Pretty much. So then in January 1959, a plumber making repairs beneath the floor of officers' quarters at North Island found 2 bags containing 133 women's shoes. Police said McFarland had lived there. Also inside the bag were women's undergarments, clothing, and a 1955 novel called Beyond Desire by Pierre Lamure. A year later, the doctors at Atascadero said they had successfully treated McFarland and he was no longer a threat to the public. Foreman, his lawyer, asked that McFarland be put on probation so he could find a job and make restitution to his victims. District Attorney Don Keller objected. This man came to San Diego and gave unrestrained vent to violence and terror, for which I would challenge anyone to find a parallel in San Diego or California, he said. The only parallel I can think of is Jack the Ripper. It's a little bit of hyperbole, I'd say.
That's a little.
Yeah. Judge Clarence Hardin sided with the prosecutor. Probation, he said, would be shocking to the community. He sent McFarland to prison for 10 years to life.
Wow.
And that was that. The news reporters moved on to other stories. McFarland eventually was released and moved back to Texas and died in 1999.
Oh, without taking any more shoes?
No, not that we know of. Memories of his spree linger. He really did send a shockwave of fear through the community, said Joe Dittler, a Coronado historian. Bill Guys still lives in Coronado home where he was sleeping that night when his mom interrupted the shoe bandit with a scream. I'll tell you this, he said. We lock all the doors now.
Well, they probably shouldn't because, probability is, you've had your scare. It's not going to be somebody else.
Right. And my main source was the San Diego Union Tribune.
The San Diego Union Tribune. Thanks for the good reporting.
That's right. Well,
let's finish up May, shall we?
Let's do it.
So we can jump into June next episode.
Let's do this.
Well, May 9th, Vertigo, a psychological thriller.
That's right.
Produced and directed by?
Alfred Hitchcock.
And starring?
Kim Novak?
Yep. And James
Jimmy
Stewart.
Yeah.
Premiered in San Francisco, where its filming had taken place. In 1989, Vertigo would be one of the first 25 films to be selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Kim is not a real 50s name, is it? That's much more of a 70s,
Kim
80s
Novak, or 80s name. Yeah, it's an 80s name.
80s name.
Monday, May 12th, 1958, a former agreement establishing the North American Air Defense Command NORAD
Mhm.
was signed between the U.S. and Canada.
Oh.
And we've heard a lot about this recently. I only
I was
going to
say, it sounds familiar.
because it's they're the ones shooting down the balloons,
Aha.
because it's all these balloons hovering between U.S. and Canada. I didn't know NORAD existed, but they're the people who patrol the
Oh.
sky, and this is kind of when the agreement to put that together happened.
Oh.
May 12th, 1958. And then May 13th, 1958 was a Tuesday, and a hostile crowd in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, carried out a violent attack meant to injure the Vice President of the U.S., Richard Nixon, along with Venezuela's former minister, Oscar Garcia Velutini. Because of violence at an earlier visit to Peru, Nixon and his wife traveled in a closed-top car rather than a convertible when the motorcade was slowed down by heavy traffic. When Caracas police stood by, the crowd cracked the bulletproof glass windows of the car with rocks and with their fists and tried to overturn the car. 12 U.S. Secret Service agents were traveling with Nixon and drew weapons, preparing to fire into the crowd, and Nixon ordered the agent in charge, Jack Sherwood, to hold fire unless Nixon gave the order to shoot.
Oh.
Nixon had earlier received intelligence briefings that indicated that he might be the target of an assassination attempt in Caracas.
Oh, man.
And that's the same day that Ben Carlin from Canada became the first person to drive around the world,
What?
arriving back at Halifax, Nova Scotia,
How do you drive around the world?
almost 8 years after his departure. It took him 8 years after his departure in an amphibious jeep called Half Safe. He left on July 19th, 1950. He just got there back 1958. So it's a jeep that converts into a boat.
Oh, my gosh.
And he drives off the coast, and then it turns into a boat. And so if you look this up, look up this guy, Ben Carlin of Canada. He had his wife with him, and then I think by the time they got to, Australia, she, gave up and was like,
fuck
I'm
you.
going back home.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I can't do this anymore. But the ocean, going just across the ocean for one, they had tried it a bunch of other times, and they had to they had to increase the fuel tank on this
I would say
hybrid
so.
vehicle to really get by. They were hallucinating different times
Oh,
from
my
just
God. Why would you want to do
months
that?
and months in the of
Seeing nothing
just
but water?
nothing, and even the drive. They drove through the desert. They went
Oh,
through
God.
Morocco, and then they went through
It was probably dangerous,
Afghanistan
too.
and everything, Russia. They just went everywhere. If you look it up online, even on Wikipedia, you can kind of see. They say from country to country that they went to, but they stopped on tiny islands, the Azores, in the middle of the ocean, Atlantic Ocean. But as they went, different countries were welcoming them, and wanted to help them at this point because they were just they were doing something amazing.
Sorry.
So, anywho, May 14th, 1958. I hope all these sounds outside aren't. Sounds like they're destroying the
I know, right?
neighborhood. I don't know what they're digging. But May 14th, 1958 was a Wednesday. And Nixon and his wife, Pat, cut short their tour of South America after being summoned home by U.S. President Eisenhower. And the purchase of a new Air Force One, approved by President Eisenhower, and for the first time, a jet airplane would be used to transport the U.S. president that same day.
Oh.
And they came back. I think that some of this had to do with them purchasing a new one. And then May 16th, 1958, in a rare example of a death caused by a caged animal at a zoo, a child visiting the Washington Zoo with her grandfather was killed when she wandered through an opening in an outer barrier and got close to a lion's cage. The 2.5-year-old girl was pulled into the cage by a lion,
Oops.
and despite efforts by the grandfather to pull her back out, the lion was stronger.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Wow.
And that same day, an experiment by a minor league baseball team of placing a live microphone at home plate was started by the Keokuk Cardinals of Keokuk, Iowa, a member of the Midwest League. Broadcasting over the public address system at Joyce Park and controlled from the press box, the sounds of conversation could be heard by the spectators. The first use was in the first game of a doubleheader, with Keokuk winning 1-0 over the visiting Waterloo Hawks. The talking home plate was soon discontinued after team management found that it could also broadcast profanity
Yeah.
and other foul language over the PA system.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And then May 20th, all 11 people aboard Capital Airlines Flight 300 were killed when the Vickers Viscount 745D was struck by a Maryland National Guard T-33 training jet.
I think it's Viscount. I know there's an S in it.
Oh, Viscount.
I think it's pronounced Viscount.
Viscount. Yeah, I think you've corrected me on that before. I'm a dumbass. What can I say?
No, you
Anyway,
just learned it from reading it. That doesn't mean you're dumb.
Wreckage of the airliner fell onto a farm near Brunswick, Maryland. The plane, which had room for 48 passengers, was carrying only 7. Was approaching Baltimore at the end of a flight from Pittsburgh, where 27 of the people on board had departed after arriving from Chicago. Luckily, the flight instructor was able to eject before the crash and parachuted to safety. Yeah, it seemed like they had a lot of these military jets. You know, there's more and more flights, I think, and they don't have good control yet. And then May 22nd, Dwight D. Eisenhower became the first U.S. president to appear on color television. Appearing on the Washington, D.C. television station at the dedication ceremonies for the new NBC's affiliate. That was the first time he was broadcast in color.
That is sweet.
Yep. And did you know that on May 23rd, 1958, 2 comedians were born on the same day? American comedian Drew Carey in Cleveland, Ohio, and Leah Delaria in Bellevue, Illinois. You know who she is?
No.
She's known for being the first openly lesbian comic on television.
Oh, sweet.
And she was in Orange is the New Black. Big Boo.
Oh, yeah.
Big Boo, baby. She's funny.
She was funny.
She's great. And on May 28th, 1958, the U.S. House of Representatives voted for the second time in 8 years to admit Alaska as the 49th state of the U.S., with the measure passing 208 to 166.
Man.
And then May 29th, 1958, Peter Anthony Manuel, an American-born resident of Scotland, was found guilty of 7 counts of murder by a jury in Glasgow and sentenced to death by hanging.
Oh.
He was dubbed the Beast of Birkenshaw.
Oh,
Have we talked about him?
I don't think.
I wonder why. I wonder when. Well, if he was killed then, I guess it would be before the 50s.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe it was way
I mean,
before.
there's
so many
covered
murders.
Every murder.
Yeah. I can't believe we haven't, because we've done a lot of these episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
And then that brings us to May 31st, 1958, which possibly this could be the greatest happening we've ever talked about on any episode. The first Pizza Hut restaurant was opened.
Oh, my God.
As brothers Dan and Frank Carney began operating at a location in Wichita, Kansas, 503 South Bluff Street. Within a year, they had 6 restaurants and more.
I wonder if their first one had that red roof on it.
Maybe. More than 60 years later, almost 19,000 worldwide. I bet you could Google it and see the very first Pizza Hut, see what it looked like. That was the same day that public buses in the Louisiana metropolis of New Orleans were fully integrated for the first time in the city's history.
Wow.
After an order from U.S. District Judge J. Skelly Wright, eliminating the practice of requiring African Americans to sit at the back of the bus.
Good.
So there you go. Progress. Slow but steady.
At a snail's pace.
And stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about June and July 1958. Yeah. We love you, listeners.
We love you. It's time to get out of here, Chuck
We
Berry.
will make love to you at any time, listeners. If you want us to make love to you, just
give a
say
holler.
the word.
All
We're
right.
open. We have an open marriage.
Get out of here, Chuck Berry.
Get out of here, Chuck Berry. Stop looking at that junk.
Don't try her, man, 'cause she dead. She take a laser beam and cut like bread. Driving through your life like a Buick. Take you the wrong way home just to watch you scrub. She'll leave you inside out with a stutter. She'll introduce you to a wrestler or brother. And you'll be crying for your uncle or mother. Before she turns you over to kiss your wounds. And when she shakes her hips, passed away.
That Truman Ego Trip is the greatest band of all time. Buy their music.